Perfect. Okay, we can go ahead and kick things off. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Climate Career Advancement. If this is your first session, we host these sessions every single month. It's a space where we reserve an hour to dedicate the session to something around climate careers. We've hosted resume workshops, networking advice, but today's session is how I built this. We have 4 incredible panelists with us today across various different industries. The format for today is going to be a quick little intro presentation from all of these panelists, and then we are going to go into breakout rooms. There's going to be 4 breakout rooms, one focused on sales, one focused on product, one partnership, and one engineering. In those breakout rooms, it's going to be 30 minutes for you to ask any questions that you have to these experts and kind of learn from their stories and hopefully feel inspired. So that's kind of the session. We're going to come back and we're going to do 10 minutes to debrief, but they're going to start out by introducing themselves, kind of their journeys, and then I'll open up the breakout room so that you can decide where you want to go and who you want to learn from. So enough talking for me. I'm going to hand it over to our panelists. And up first, we have Andre, who's going to introduce himself and a little bit of his journey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Okay, shall I just launch in, Natalie?
Yep, go for it.
All right, cool. So my name is Andre Murer. I am head of product. Today, I'm head of product with the Building Decarbonization Coalition, where we work really across the supply chain, really across the building electrification, decarbonization space. And in my own role, I focus on building consumer tools to help homeowners and renters electrify their homes and switch from fossil fuel appliances to electric ones. So my background is all in software. I have a computer science degree. A career in software lends itself to a mobile lifestyle, so I certainly took advantage of that. I started out in Brazil, where I'm from, but had stints in New Zealand, in the UK, in Poland, in Ireland, and finally in Boston, in the United States, where I am today. I've played a number of roles in software, from like a SQL developer to project manager to head of engineering. And most recently, I was working with a global strategy firm called Oliver Wyman. My latest role there was as chief product officer for this small internal startup called Retail Solutions, where we were building merchandising optimization SaaS tools for large supermarkets. So in around beginning of 2022, I had a bit of a change of heart and started to question the value that I was bringing to society and to global civilization at large. And really, I was looking for more purpose in my job. And when I realized that in the climate space, I could not only make myself more useful, but I could put my skills towards something that I was actually passionate about, and focus on some of the most interesting, most complex problems in the world today. Like, from the moment I understood all that, it was an easy choice. It was just a matter of figuring out how the hell do I do this. So that was really the beginning of a long journey. I learned a lot about myself on that journey and what I care about and my priorities in life, in my career are. And I spent really a lot of time trying to understand the space. I started without a network in climate at all, so I spent a lot of time networking, meeting people, a lot of time on communities like MCJ, a lot of time learning. So podcasts and books and articles, and I went deep into the climate Substack community. I did the Terra.do fellowship, spent a lot of time and energy on LinkedIn, building a presence, really, sort of sharpening up my own personal brand. I then finally decided to start writing a blog on Substack, all of which, from the networking, from the learning to the kind of brand building and content sharing, was extremely useful in ultimately what got me to break into climate. You might have noticed I didn't really mention anything about the traditional path of looking for open roles, sharpening up my CV, applying for jobs. I didn't really do a lot of that. I did some of it in the beginning. I quickly felt like it was a bit of a waste of time because most of my applications was just going to this black hole. And I was fortunate because I had been laid off, so I had time to spare and a bit of a financial cushion. So I really took the time to build a network and build my brand. And ultimately, that's what did it. I will pause here. I can share a lot more in the breakout room and answer questions, but I will make time for others. Natalie, over to you. Or
Awesome.
Dave.
Over to you, Dave.
Hey, nice to be here, and excited to chat with folks in the breakout room. So I currently work for Mill, where we are helping individual households keep food out of the landfill. I started my career in consulting. After a couple of years, was kind of like craving having a little bit more of a tangible impact on the business that I was working for, and so I hopped over into the startup world. Spent about 6 years working for two different startups. The second one was in the food space, and that's I think what kind of got me interested in more of the like food side of climate. Realized though after working for that company, All Day Kitchens, that I was really just craving working somewhere where I really identified with the mission and felt like I was contributing to something that was more impactful on the global scale, not just impactful for the company that I was working for. And so that's what was really kind of got me interested in climate. And so started exploring different opportunities. Was really fortunate to have learned about MCJ, which is where I ultimately learned about Mill and got connected to the team there. And so currently, yeah, working in partnerships and growth at Mill. I think some of the things that I thought were surprising along the way is just how windy and unpredictable the job search process is. And so, it's really hard to do this, but just continuing to focus on what you have control over and letting other stuff go is really important for your mental sanity while you're going through the climate job search process. And then if Natalie, if you don't mind just going to the next slide. So I've got one slide here where I just wanted to kind of like outline what my process looked like, and everyone's process looks different, but thought that this might be helpful for folks if you're kicking things off. So here are my steps. So step one, it's like think about what you care about. The dimensions here that I thought about were like, what industry do I want to be in? What geography? I wanted to be in the Bay Area. What role? I realized actually I don't care that much about role. So I'm going to be super flexible. What size? I wanted to be in a really small company. So, figure out what you care about. Next, get your short list of companies, and a tactic that I used that I thought was pretty easy was go to the couple of big like venture firms that are in climate, and they've got all of their portfolio companies, and you just go through that list and figure out which of those align with the things that you care about. Once you've got that list, it's all about just finding anyone who is willing to make an introduction at those companies. And this is where you really have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. It's LinkedIn. It's going through your network and seeing where there are second connections. And I think what I learned during this process is folks really want to help you. So like you can't be afraid to reach out to that person that you know from college and haven't spoken to in 15 years. It's okay. They're probably going to be really pumped that you reached out and excited to help you. So just like make yourself do it, and ultimately it's gonna have a really positive outcome. Um, Once you've got that connection into the company, do your research before you talk to them. I felt that podcasts, particularly MCJ, were great for that. Oftentimes, climate companies have done a podcast. And so just listening to that and reflecting on it is going to prepare you pretty well. And then when you're in the first couple conversations with them, focus on just asking a lot of questions. I think that kind of demonstrates who you are and what you're interested in, and kind of like where you could bring value even more effectively than answering questions about your own background. So yeah, that's a little about me, and pumped to meet folks in the breakout room.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. Up next, we have Laurel.
Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for having me, and nice to meet everyone. So I think my lens or my perspective, not only is it sales and business development, but it's sort of early career, right? First 5 years. I think the generation I'm in is certainly affected by not only COVID layoffs, but also tech layoffs, right? The ones we've been seeing the last 2 years. So I'm sure many of you in here know somebody in that was in my position. I was actually, as you can probably tell from my little timeline, affected twice by layoffs. I started my career in a totally different industry. I was in entertainment and media, and I, for years, was like super set I was going to produce TV and film. And so it was totally different. In the first job I ever got, and I was in New York City, I was working in market research. We worked with Broadway and movie studios, and I was furloughed, right? So pivoted into tech sales. It was a great opportunity. Learned a lot at Elastic. Got 3 major and minor promotions, like busted, worked really hard, and then got a promotion, and then I was part of a reduction in force. So super disappointing, but just really bad timing. And all of that really just kind of gave me the time, I guess, and like the opportunity to say, like, what do I really want to do next? And what are my skills? So where am I interested in applying those skills? What industry? And so I basically figured out climate tech software sales, like super specific. And that's why it was really difficult to find a job for me, not only based on the experience I had had thus far, but also just kind of how specific I was looking and what's been going on in climate tech. So was unemployed for most of last year, but finally landed a job in late September. And I've been working at Rubicon. So what is Rubicon? It's a software company. We're a public works technology company, and we sell our software to governments, but also to private sector clients that are doing, bear with me, heavy duty fleet routing. Or high density routing for heavy duty fleets, excuse me. So we're finding efficiencies in their operations, whether it's GHG emissions reductions, whether it's fuel, whether it's time, waste in general. So that's kind of the space I'm in, is waste. And it's great. It's really fun. There's such a good product market fit, and the team is great. So I'm really happy where I am. And I guess if we go to the next slide, I'm definitely not covering everything on every slide right now in the 5 minutes, but I'm happy in the breakout room to go in more in depth. My process has been, I think because it was practically 9 months, I can relate to many of you that might be in the same boat. It was grueling. It was super competitive, and I over time had to really refine what is my strategy. I had a whole script written here to talk through, but I'm just kind of gonna ad lib because there's not enough time. But I had a student mindset, right? I was an intern. I took 1.5 Academies course, I think their second cohort over the summer. I prepared for every interview, and eventually I started building out a deck, not to be too intense in a first recruiter screening call or in a hiring manager call, but to show that I put that forethought into why do I want to work here, why am I the right fit, and what do I want this job, basically. Showing I'd done research, showing I was prepared. It definitely helped me stand out in interview processes, and I was pretty much in the bag for the first and second calls. And then it was just about nailing those interview assignments. 75% networking was the key, right? I kept a super detailed, and I should mention, shout out to Silas. This was on the previous slide, but he had a great Medium post article with a sample deck that I've pretty much iterated on. Silas works at Next Wave Partners, and he also has a podcast called Clean Techies podcast. So he was also helpful to me. Natalie, how am I doing on time? Because I feel like I'm over.
You're good. Do you have any like final thoughts that you want to say?
Yeah, I'll wrap
Okay.
it up, and then in the breakout room, I can
Perfect.
talk more about it. I use coaches. I would just say definitely when you approach networking, treat people the way you want to be treated, right? Like thank them for their time, thank them for their advice. If they don't even have time to talk to you, anything that you can glean over LinkedIn DMs is great. And then return the favor, help other people. You probably can't help every single person, but if you find, if like I was looking for sales roles and other people were looking for marketing roles, and I would see them and I would send them to them, and I'd try to remember, like, were they interested in ag tech versus, I don't know, something else. So just try to keep other people in mind, and I think karma is real, so it will all come back to help you, and take care of yourself. Mental health is important.
Definitely. Awesome. And last but certainly not least, you have Nantis.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me here. So my journey to climate has been it's definitely taken a long time, but it only accelerated a few years ago during the pandemic. So I sort of grew up as a robotician, kind of doing sort of like robotics research, and then gradually went more into AI as the deep learning revolution was kind of happening during 2012. I was at the right time in the right position to sort of have a really good time in machine learning. And sort of I've had a sort of career-wise that's been really good, and sort of it led me to basically do a PhD at Oxford, and then sort of working for a few years across various places, various top AI labs. But since probably 2018, I sort of started wanting to figure out whether I could make any kind of impact within the climate space. I'm very lucky that my wonderful partner is a climate policy researcher at Chatham House, and sort of like during the pandemic, I was basically working on sort of AI stuff, and she was in the same room as me, having calls, doing like amazing and really tough, having amazing, really tough conversations with all sorts of like stakeholders in various climate industries or climate aviation industries at the very least. And she was having actually quite a hard time. And there was this sort of this weird disconnect between the work that I was doing that was really fun, but also really hard, and that I was really focusing on quite importantly, and the work that she was doing. And fundamentally, I was just playing games with machine learning, and there wasn't anything that by sort of solving on the problems that I was working on, I could then sort of carry out and carry over on helping with climate change. And so I sort of had a sort of good old-fashioned breakdown, which led to me saying, fine, I'm going to quit Google, and I'm just going to go and find a startup that works on climate. So in a sense, so that's what I did. For the past 3 years, I was working at a company called Carbon, where the goal still is to use machine learning to optimize the carbon emissions of industries like cement and steel. So I'm sure most of you know that these are hard to hit industries, but they're also like sort of foundational industries of society, and they produce a lot of CO2 emissions overall. And I sort of joined it as the second employee and started the machine learning team there. And for the past 3 years, I was there. Now, actually, I'm in between jobs. I'm technically unemployed, but I'm joining another startup in the Bay Area. And I unknowingly, I can't say what they are, but it'll basically be on some exciting clean energy deep tech stuff. Yeah, so my journey has been probably very different from a lot of other people. There aren't many folks that come from the AI sort of like community, especially from the sub community that I was part in, that have ended up joining the climate change sort of mission. I'm hoping that more of them will show up, but I always felt alone. Even nowadays, I probably know of like really good people. There are maybe like 5 to 10 that are actually working on climate change. So very few. So if you know anyone that is very strong on machine learning, please send it to me. I'll convince them to work on climate change. But sort of, from my perspective, I didn't do much to find a job in sort of climate. The first thing I was looking for is starting a company, because I didn't see the space as being wide enough and the opportunities as being like reasonable for the kind of skill sets that I had. Things are now starting to change in a way which I think that's different. I was lucky enough that I sort of during a random summer I met what would be the CEO of Cabo, and sort of like we clicked together very, very quickly. But generally, my advice is there are, so at least if you're sort of like a technical person and you're like scared that you might need to know a lot about climate change to like start hacking on solutions, I beg you, just like go and work on climate change. Like, yes, there's a ton of stuff to learn, and I think it's definitely useful to come in with a student mindset. Like, it's you don't want to be cocky and sort of like to undervalue the knowledge that the community that is already there has put a lot of effort into building. But pretty much every sector requires more ideas and more people working on things, and so there's definitely an opportunity cost in waiting to starting that I don't think is necessary right now. So climate change is, at least from an impact perspective, is now definitely we're in the critical decade to do things, and I think also we're now in acceleration phase where it is the right time to join the fight, right? So basically, my only advice to people is that if you're struggling to sort of think about whether you actually want to get into climate change, just do it. Just do it, and you'll feel much better, I promise. In terms of what I personally used to get myself over that particular line, I didn't, apart from the MCJ podcast that was very useful to me, and I think I've probably listened to 70% of the episodes right now, so like a few hundred episodes. Apart from that, I found that the highest ROI for me was to just go off and read the IPCC report, which sounds daunting. It's 10,000 pages overall, so you don't want to go off and do that. But the summary reports are a very good place to start. There are a few of them. They are very high level, and they're not technical in a way which are hard to read. And they're written for lay people. And I think that they're really underutilized resources. And you tend to always find resources that use what they've sort of like collected in terms of analysis. But if you actually go to the main source, which is their reports, you'll find that they're really, really good resources just to learn basically what the state of the art is. So yeah, so I'm done. I'm looking forward to talk more about what we should be doing from an engineering point of view.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for taking that time to share. I feel like it was a really good primer for the breakout room. So with that, now we are going to head into breakout rooms. I'm going to open up 4 of them. They're going to say all of our panelists' names and their domain expertise. And then all of you just need to select whichever one you're interested in. So if you want to learn more about sales, head to Laurel's. If you want to learn more about partnerships, go talk to Dave, etc. So once I open those, do that. If you want to bounce around, that's totally okay. I'll be hanging out in the main room. So come back to the main room and you can go to another one if you want to learn. A reminder to our panelists, please remember to record your breakout rooms. That way, if you attend one, you want to hear the recording for the other one, I can share that with you. We are going to have time for 1 or 2 people to share when they come back. So just remember that in the back of your mind. If something happens that you're excited about, take a mental note of that, and then we can share when we all come back together. We're going to be in there for about 25 or so minutes. I will call you back. Okay, great. I'm going to open up the rooms, and then you can all select which one you would like to go to. Panelists, obviously choose your own room.
All right, Lee, take us away.
Andre, thanks so much for doing this today. As all of the panelists so far have said, networking is absolutely key. And on this journey, as a fellow product person, how to network is something that not a lot of people explain. Could you tell us a little bit about how you networked and which avenues were most successful, and anything that you learned along the way beyond the obvious to avoid or to maybe do differently?
Hey, networking. Gosh, I hate networking with a passion. Um, but it is actually super useful, and it can be quite fulfilling. Or at least I found a way that kind of works for me. Um, so I think the main thing to start with was really getting involved in the Slack communities. So my climate journey, to me, was really the most important one. Work on climate is also really good. I think the main difference there is work on climate feels kind of big in personal. MCJ, at least when I was super active about a year or so ago, it was a lot smaller and more intimate. And you could really engage with people there. And they had events like this one, virtual coffee chats and so on. So I really took advantage of that. And sometimes I would reach out to people just cold on MCJ and occasionally on LinkedIn. The response rates on MCJ were far higher than on LinkedIn. So I was doing a lot of these kind of one-on-one virtual chats, maybe 4 or 5 a week. And I was really making a point of going to in-person events. There's quite a few in the Boston area, so I'm lucky there. Like I've spoken to folks in other places where the climate community isn't as active, so there aren't as many in-person events. That makes it more difficult. But for me, the networking is like I cannot stand small talk. So I try to really make a more meaningful connection, like take the time in a quiet setting to get to know someone for at least 30 minutes. That has been very valuable to me. And, while I have met quite a number of people who I've probably forgotten about and don't remember the names. So when I did come across quite a few people throughout my journey that I'm still in touch with today and who have been very helpful in actually me landing the job. Hopefully that helps. Networking hard. David.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. And +1 to your sentiment around networking. I feel the same way. So it's been a challenge. But yeah, I had a more specific question, maybe on the vocabulary used in the kind of product space in climate tech. I come from tech software, where I was working across a combination of sales and product roles that had probably in my 13 years there, maybe 20 different role titles of product manager, product expert, product commercialization lead, whatever, whoever was the kind of managing director in that org decided to label the roles. And I've found a little bit of challenge in kind of maybe articulating those roles or labeling them with the right vocabulary for a PM or a product role in climate that doesn't have hardware. Like I don't have engineering hardware experience, and I'm not a computer scientist. I have a technical background, but my PM work was more in kind of a non-technical space, bridging sales and engineering. So curious if you have any advice on, yeah, just the kind of vocabulary to use in those types of role titles and how to articulate that for the climate space.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know that I have a great answer to that. I have also noticed how, climate does have a lot of sort of physical hardware type products. So a product manager, I guess, could mean different things for different companies. But I think that's true outside of climate as well, to some extent. Maybe not so much coming from tech. Like that's my world as well. But it is probably more common within climate than in other sectors. So I don't know. It's not a problem that I've really encountered. I find like physical products like fascinating, and I don't think I'm comfortable enough, or I wouldn't be comfortable enough taking on a product role in that world, as fascinating as it is. So I kind of try to shy away from it. in my search. So I think naturally I gravitated towards sort of tech PM roles. Yeah, sorry, that's probably not a very good question. I don't like. Let me
Yeah.
know when you when you find out.
Yeah, it's a challenging problem. I haven't found anyone with a good answer to it. I guess just a quick follow-up to that. Do you see a lot of PM roles in climate that don't require computer science backgrounds?
Um, yeah, I would say that my role was one of those. I happen to have a CS degree, but I don't think, well, I certainly would not need to have that kind of software background to take on the role that I'm taking now. Yeah, look, I think it's true as well that product roles are like very different from company to company. At least that's like my experience has been. Having played product roles across, maybe 3 different companies, I think it was very different in each one of those. So I think there's a little bit more work in sort of really understanding what they need, because that's often not articulated in the job description. I mean, that was certainly true with me, when I first had a conversation with the founder. I mean, they didn't even have the BDC didn't even have a job description out there, but I had a conversation with the founder and really got to really understand what they were looking for. They said they were looking for a PM. I'm like, okay, let's talk about what challenges you're actually facing, what you actually need right now. And we kind of crafted the role together there. Although I think it was a fairly unique type situation. It's not always that you get that opportunity. But I think understanding what they need, I think is key to make sure that your skills kind of fit that bill.
Thank you.
All right, another Dave.
Hi. So you've successfully bridged the gap between the tech world and the consulting world into a climate sustainability role. I have the same background in product development and in consulting, so strategic initiatives, which are more abstract than just software or hardware. But what I've found is it's very difficult to have like people look at you and say, like, oh, we value that experience. What I typically get is, oh, but you don't really have that sustainability climate background, though I have worked on those things internally on companies. How did you manage to make that jump?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me was, early on in my journey, someone told me probably the best advice that I got, and I don't even remember who gave it to me, but it was basically said, look, you don't necessarily need experience in climate to get a climate job, so to speak, but you need to demonstrate that you're passionate about it and that you're interested in that. And the best way to do that is to just write about it, like create content in some way, shape, or form that kind of demonstrates to the world, to the internet, that you're really interested in this thing, or that you're committed to it enough that you're taking the time to learn and to write and to publish something. And I struggled with that idea for some time, and I resisted it for a long time. What do I have to say that's interesting for people out there? Like, it's all gonna suck. Like, really, I have no talent in writing. Like, and I don't even have a background in here. Like, what am I doing? Like, writing about climate? But once I, kind of talked myself out of those, out of those objections, I started doing it, and that did make a difference, because it did kind of created a bit of a online brand, right, where people would sort of associate kind of my climate writing to me, and maybe that made me a bit more of an interesting candidate or a person to talk to who was passionate about solving those particular problems.
Was there a
that's what.
particular channel that you found to be best for that?
I write. I still write on Substack, and that it's just a platform that I like. But the Medium is great. I know people who write in Medium, and even LinkedIn these days. But I found really that like writing on Substack and really marketing it, I guess, if I can use that word, on LinkedIn was really the best approach, because you can get a lot a lot wider reach on LinkedIn, and that's where potential employers hang out. As as much as I hate LinkedIn almost as much as I hate networking. But I have it to thank for my job, so I'll shut up about LinkedIn.
Great, thank you.
Harini.
Yeah. Hi. First of all, thank you so much for doing this. And I just wanted to say that I'm actually a recent graduate and I do not have like proper work experience. I just have internships. And I've done like a program management internship recently. And I'm currently a part of the 1.5 Academy cohort. So yeah. So I joined that to like learn more about the space and all of that. So my question for you is, I eventually want to transition to product management, but I want to find out other, entry-level roles that would help me transition into it, especially given that climate sector is pretty niche. And yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at right now.
Yeah, look, I've never been in your situation, but I have to think that you're fortunate in that like people are going to have much less expectation of because you're recent grad, people are not going to demand previous climate experience. So in a way, I think that might give you a slight advantage. So I was just focus on finding the right role for you, finding the right company that's working on the right solution, something that you're passionate about, and just going after that. And this is a more general comment. I think that goes for everyone. Like, don't let the fact that you don't have climate experience hold you back. That's rarely a problem if you can demonstrate that you've got the passion and the interest, right? But companies in the space who are hiring, they understand, like everybody's saying, look, we need more people in climate. Climate is still a new sector. It's growing, right? We need more people to come into climate. Like by definition, that means getting a lot of people who don't have any climate experience to come and work on climate. So the companies are very open to that. They just want to make sure that your passion and interest really shine through.
Got it.
So I'd focus on that.
And would you recommend in-person networking events for the same, or is it more, I don't know, like at least a couple of events that I came across were more, related to like venture capital firms and founders kind of looking for funding for most of the parts, or yeah.
Yeah. I certainly recommend in-person events. Thinking back, most of the connections I made in person are still, very strong connections that I have today. Compared to my virtual networking efforts. So highly recommended, but I guess it really depends on where you are and what kind of events. But I think an event where founders are going to pitch their ideas is actually a great place to be. You get to talk to people about the solutions that they're building and why is it a problem and why they're passionate about it and what their main pain point is, and what kind of what is the problem that's keeping them up at night. I think those are all great conversations to have, regardless of whether they're looking to hire or not. I think just building that sort of network is important.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Christy.
Hi. I think you kind of touched on what I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you this anyways and see where you come from it. I think I relate a lot about how you went on the journey to find yourself as well as your professional growth. So thinking back now that you're on the other side, what is a learning or like an advice that really surprised you or that stuck with you?
Yeah, I'll mention something that I think Dave said in the main room, was that how collaborative the space is and how open people usually are to sort of connecting, having a conversation, hearing you out, telling you about their idea or their company. I was actually very surprised with that. And even once I started my job with the BDC, I was connecting with a whole bunch of startup founders in the building electrification space, and I was really struck by how open and collaborative people are, and how willing they are to share their plans and their strategies, and the struggles that they're going through with their businesses and their solutions. So it feels like a very open and collaborative space. I feel like I can reach out to anyone in climate who I come across, and chances are they're going to respond. I don't think that that's true elsewhere, or at least not from my experience.
No, I totally agree with you there. Everyone is super nice here. Thanks.
It's a self-selecting bunch. All right, Nude. Did I get that right?
Almost. No. Hi, Andre.
No.
Thanks for your time today. I have a question about that. So I'm in tech, looking to get into solar electrification, and it seems like my challenge, and many others from what I've heard, is just getting that first bit of experience. So looking to the future and assuming that I've already got that, does it actually get easier once you have some climate experience to get into interviews with others, climate roles? And therefore, should the main focus right now simply be to get any kind of experience in the climate sector that I'm interested in and passionate about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. That's certainly the approach that I took. I'm like, look, even if I don't get to focus on that exact thing, that exact solution that I was hoping to, I think the key thing is to just getting into climate as a big umbrella, and I think that makes it easier. Now, something that I found out is that, I'm now very focused on like building decarbonization. And that to me feels like the sector. It's a little funny to me to talk about climate, because there's such a broad range of things, that to me the sector that I work in is like buildings. So I think even breaking outside of that would be challenging, but I think it does help to be in the climate space. And I guess more to the point, whatever ideas and preconceptions you start with are very unlikely to be where you're going to end up with. And I think that's part of the fun. Like, you're not going to know what you're really passionate about, what you really care about, until you start doing it to some extent and see how much you like it. So, a little bit of trial and error, I think, is useful.
Great. Thanks, Andre.
Teixas, did I get that right?
Yeah, that was. Thanks a lot. Hi, Andre. Thanks for spending time with all of us who aspire to take our climate journey. So I have my background in tech, in data analytics. Now I see myself, I can fit in a role where I work on client data side, client data analytics, and bringing insights into action. But I'm also yet to figure out how I can help on the product side, because working in the climate tech, I would be also necessarily working on product management team and bringing insights and challenges what clients face on the clients face on through the product, features and product. So just wanted to know how I can bring my data skills and my aspiration to get on business analytics on climate tech on climate customer success and all this sort of roles.
Hey, how's it going, folks? All right. Hopefully this will be the most fun breakout room. Cool. I'd love to do like the sorry, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. I'd love to do the like hand raising thing. So then people can like chat live versus I feel like the chat is a little stale. But yeah, I mean like I'm like happy to talk about whatever. Also, I just to be clear, I'm not an expert in any way. I went through the climate switch process in the last year, and happy to share any of my stories. But all I've got is sample size of one. So if other people have thoughts and perspectives on folks' questions, like please chime in. Cool. Gabriel, do you wanna start?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having us on. So my background's also in partnerships, which was one of the reasons why I was curious to chat with you. And one of the things I've been wondering is, well, I guess a little more background on kind of the area in which you're doing partnerships. That can mean a lot of things. For me, it's like strategic account management, that kind of thing. And what I've been wondering is if you found that kind of the background and partnerships and the soft skills that come with that have worked well when you're going into the interviews, or if you found like you really had to build more subject matter expertise. So I know you had kind of the food background. For me, I'm looking more into like the decarbonization intelligent SaaS platform side, wondering if I should go and get like greenhouse gas accounting certifications or something on the subject matter side, or how you generally have approached that.
Sure. So I did not have partnerships background, but before this, but I think the question is more generally like how transferable are skills that you have like outside of the climate space then versus then when you're diving into the climate space. My experience was that like climate startups feel like basically just startups and they happen to be in the climate space. Obviously, there's a mission component to it. That is what like attracts a lot of us to it and is something that, the companies that you're applying for are going to really care about. But like in terms of like really what you're doing on a day-to-day side of things or like the technical skills that you need, the fact that it's in climate, I don't think actually like plays that big of a role. Now, obviously, if you're going into like um if you're going into a very like technical field, then like whatever industry that is, like there may be like technical needs. But again, the fact that they're like decarbonizing in that field versus, I don't know, doing whatever else folks do in that industry, I don't think it really makes a huge difference. So like I would encourage folks to just like not be super nervous or feel like they have to do a bunch of like unusual preparation for a climate interview versus what you would just do for any other interview. Cool. Aaron.
Hey Dave, thanks for doing this. And like I really appreciate a lot of the stuff that you said in the main room because I feel like it's almost verbatim a lot of the stuff that I've said as I've been sort of like navigating this like pretty extreme like career change. And my question is really just like trying to figure out like if I'm in the right room. I like took a lot of your advice already in terms of like figuring out like I know I want to work in climate and I know there's a lot of subsectors there, but climate broadly. I know sort of like the location and like the size of the company and all of that, but I'm really trying to like figure out the role. And I'm also trying to figure out if I'm in the right room. So I'm wondering if you could sort of like shed some light into like why you chose like partnerships as like the role specifically, and like how do you sort of discern the differences between partnerships and sales?
Cool. So I was highly flexible on role. I was optimizing for geography, being in person, and working at a physical company that was doing something physical in the climate space. And so I was like, cool, like that already brings my list down to like 40 or 50 companies. And role, I'm cool to be super flexible on. Obviously, I'm not qualified for a lot of roles, but within the set of roles that I might be qualified for, I am down to do whatever. And so when I went and spoke to companies, I was not necessarily pitching I'm I want to do sales or I want to do biz ops or, whatever it is. I was trying to pitch them on generally here are my skill sets and like this is why I'm interested in you as a company. And then like feel from them like where do they think the fit is. And when it worked with Mill, the person I was speaking with, like she ran kind of like the business side of the org, and she was like, hey, these are the couple of things that I'm trying to solve for that we might be hiring for in the future that I think might be a good fit for you given your skill set. And it ended up being like partnerships felt like the path of least resistance. And so then I was just like, cool, like I'm going to do partnerships at Mill. But I didn't go into that conversation having that perspective. And then like, again, I've only been doing partnerships for like a year. So there are probably people here who have like way more experience. In my very short experience, I like I think, yeah, it's very company specific, whether it's more partnerships, it's actually like sales and just like bigger sales with maybe more like operational nuance versus like true, what I would think of as like true partnerships, which is like you're not actually selling a product directly to them. Like you are like jointly doing something that then benefits both of your organization's abilities to grow and sell or reduce costs. And so like I'm kind of in both worlds, honestly. And like we have a pretty small team, and so we straddle lots of different areas. Hopefully that was helpful and informative.
No, that was perfect. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Miles.
Well, you basically answered most of my question, Dave, right there, because I wanted to sort of get your sense of sales versus partnerships. I guess a couple follow-up questions. One is what are your skills and how are you leveraging them, just to get a sense of what you see your skills at. And then I think the second question is there anything that you're upskilling in now to be better at partnerships?
Yeah. I would consider myself a business generalist, which I feel like if, I don't know, you did like consulting or banking out of college, that's where lots of folks kind of end up. So I wouldn't actually say that I have any like one particular skill. I think that what I pride myself in is being highly adaptable and whatever the application of a problem, like being able to very quickly break down that problem into like what exactly were we trying to understand and solve, like how can we break that out into different pieces that feel bite-sized, figure out who do we pull in order to actually solve those problems, and then like help to manage the process to get to the solution. Apologies if that's a little vague, but like that's truly kind of like what I feel like I have gotten good at, which allows me to like flex into lots of different areas. Though I'm often not I'm not gonna be like the best salesperson or the best operator or the best analytics person, but I can like do all them good enough that at a startup where you don't have lots of specialization yet, it's actually like really helpful. Um, so sorry, that was I think your first question. What was
And
your
but I would say those are soft skills as I hear them, which are super valuable. So I hear your soft skills, right? So is there anything that you're upskilling in, maybe the harder
right.
skills like negotiation or anything else that you've kind of
Sure.
you're training around that might
Yeah.
be something that I could do, because partnerships is something I'm thinking about.
Sure. I think within partnerships specifically, like storytelling is incredibly important, and just generally in sales, and in life, storytelling is really helpful. It's something that I see some folks on our team that are like really, really good at, and it's an area where I'm okay, but I certainly would not consider myself particularly good at that. And so that's an area where I try to really listen when those folks are pitching or talking to a new potential partner or customer, because it's an area where I think that I can improve and it'll make me a lot better at my job.
Thank you.
Sure. Satoa?
Yep. Hi, thanks so much for taking the time. I have two questions. Kind of one that's related to the previous one. I was curious how you differentiate yourself as a journalist. I also come from a consulting background, and sometimes I find it difficult to, really show and differentiate myself, I guess, especially when there are a lot of other ex-consultants, generalists coming into this space, and also like how to demonstrate some of the soft skills that you mentioned. And then second question is a little bit different. I was curious, when you're networking, how direct you were about that you were looking for a job, and kind of the balance of like not being super transactional and maybe having more information conversation, but also kind of getting a concrete sense of, is this organization hiring in the near future, kind of like the way you had your conversation with Mel.
Sure. Let me start with the second one. I actually think that it's incredibly important to be very specific about what you want out of conversations when you're asking someone to help you with something, particularly if you don't know them that well. So if you've got like a really good friend, then you can be like, yo, like, want to chat for a couple minutes? Like, I'm thinking about doing this job thing. And they'll be like, cool, yeah, we're probably gonna like hang out this weekend anyway. Like, that's fine. But when you're reaching out to someone on LinkedIn that you haven't talked to in 10 years, or they've connected you to someone new, I think actually like it's not it is transactional, but like that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because they are getting out of it the like joy of helping someone, which like most humans just like genuinely get joy out of that. And so I actually have gotten feedback in parts of my process where someone was like, okay, can you just like, what do you want? Like, what are you asking for? Like they want to know how they can help you. So saying, I'm looking for a job in climate. And like what I found very useful is like, I want an introduction to this person. Can you make an introduction to this person and just like be very specific? And most times they will just say yes and they'll make the introduction and like, cool, like everyone got what they wanted. So I'd say don't worry about being transactional, like be specific. In terms of standing out, I think so one, like I wouldn't worry too much about crafting your resume. Like you should have a resume and you should feel good about it, but like realistically, cold outreach to or like cold applications doesn't matter how good your resume is. Like it's such a crapshoot. So like there's not much that you can do. The way that you stand out is you have an introduction. Like you have someone who says, hey, like I met this person, like they're great. You should chat with them. Like I think they could be really interesting for your organization. And then you have a conversation with them, and either there's going to be a skill set fit or not. Like that's how you break through the like all the like bullshit and get people's attention.
Got it. Thanks so much.
Sure. Zach.
Hey, Dave. Two questions, I guess, piggybacking off of that last question. How do you almost feel like you're not necessarily being as transactional when you are connecting with someone, going back to them and, continuing to network with them and like seeing if they have a contact or if they can connect you with someone else? Right now I'm looking, I don't have a job right now, so it can be challenging for me to find like, what can I help you with? And I'm always going to offer that, but yeah.
Sorry, just to make sure I understand your question. It's like if you're asking someone for help, like how can you give them help back? Or sorry, do you mind just like
kind of, I guess, like how to, I guess, or just being okay with just asking for something if you know that you're not going to be able to get something back if you're continuing to talk to them because, they're a good resource.
Yeah. You got to just ask for help, and so when I was going through the search, right, I was mostly taking, right, I was asking for help and people were helping me and I wasn't able to give a ton back. Like now that I have a job in climate, like now I'm giving back. Like I'm having lots of conversations with folks that are interested and I'm like providing any advice that I can. I don't know if it's good advice, but like trying to help, and if I can make connections I can. So it's like don't view it as like in that 30 minutes, like it has to be an even trade. Like view it as like over the course of your lifetime, like as a human, try to give back as much as you're taking. And if everyone does that, then like the world is balanced. So, you just ask for help. And if they don't want to help you, then like, great, you're in the same spot as you were before, and don't feel guilty about it.
Cool. And then I had one, but then another one just quickly came up. So I guess how to market yourself for a different role than your background kind of shows, even if it is a slight pivot. And then the last quick question is Mill still all in office?
Mill is mostly in office. And sorry, I have a short attention. I like
It's okay.
What was the first one?
The first one was more how to market yourself or kind of position yourself when you're applying to a job where your background doesn't really line up. My background's in kind of media advertising and customer success. but I want to completely move away from the advertising space. That happens to just be like most of my career. So
yeah. Well, so don't worry too much about the industry. Like almost everyone that's going into climate wasn't working in that industry before. So I would just focus on like what were the like things that you did in your job, because lots of them are probably like super transferable to most other industries. And it like that requires like reflection and like really thinking through what you did, and then sometimes being a little bit creative with how you position it. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't get caught up on like the industry.
thanks, Dave.
Sure. Hi, Sarah.
Hey. So I did a little bit of LinkedIn stalking on you and saw your background's EY Parthenon, and I'm also ex-EY. And I thought coming out of EY that would be really good. But I'm starting to find that with some of the startups, it's maybe like a bad word to have been, or it's kind of a bad legacy to have that Big Four consulting background, because they expect you to be kind of ivory tower, like used to a team of 25 people and not able to jump in and actually do anything. Did you struggle with that? And if so, how did you fight it?
So when I joined the first startup that I worked for, that was a question for sure.
Yeah.
Once you like do a startup, then no one's like, can they do a startup? But that was certainly a question. I think one of the things that I was fortunate is I was still like 4 years out of school. And so I think that like just transparently, like there is an age bias. Like startups are like, oh, if you're, just out of college, I assume that you're really willing to like hustle and grind and whatever. And like that doesn't necessarily stop when you get older, but like there is a bias. And so I think that like we should just acknowledge that. And that's a like shitty reality that like lots of us will have to face if we're like jumping into startups. I think that like the way that like at the time I like talked about it was just think about the examples of when like the work that you were doing was um uh like was really like gritty and required like moving really quickly and figuring things out on your own without a lot of resources, because like that's ultimately what they care about is like, can you work in a resource constrained environment? Can you push yourself outside of your comfort zone? Can you like grind and grit and move really quickly and not let like process get in the way of results? If you can like speak that language, then the right startup will like see the value, and like that's where you want to work anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Patricia.
Hello. I'll be quick. Sorry for not being able to put the camera on. Dave, so I have a question, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You talked about before about partnerships with other companies or so. If that's the case, I just want to know, because I'm going into consulting like on my own at the moment, and just want to know how you approach people in general to get those connections for partnerships.
Sure. I mean like for us, there are a couple of specific like categories of companies that we're trying to partner with. And so we will do a lot of cold outreach. So we'll go to a conference and like try to like connect with someone. We will like reach out on LinkedIn. We will also like try to get connections in a way. It's kind of like a job search. Like we'll have someone in the industry and we'll say like, hey, can you like connect us with like these types of folks? So I'm definitely not an expert on the like the cold sourcing. A lot of what we do is more inbound. But those are the tactics that we've taken.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Hey, Drew.
Hi, Dave. My question was so I'm undergoing a career transition. I used to be an actuary, and now I'm trying to get into climate. And I've done a master's as well. And a lot of times when people ask me, what I'm interested in, it's easier for me to say that I'm not interested in certain things like ESG or green building or something like that. So is that a right approach, that there's so many fields that I'm interested in, and it's better to kind of set a broad net, or I should hyper focus on certain industries? And they're all kind of generally risk finance type roles that I'm looking for, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any right or wrong approach. It's like in terms of like what you go after, I think that like just being honest with yourself about like truly what you're interested in is the most important thing. And so if like you are truly interested in a broad range of things, like great, like cast a wide net. I think when you're speaking to those companies, like focusing on why you're excited about that specific area is definitely the way to go versus like saying, oh, I don't want to do these things. So like, okay, well, I don't care about why you don't want to do those things. I care about why do you want to do this thing. But yeah, in terms of like the search itself, I think like totally fine to go broad if that's where your interests are.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. I think we've got one more minute. So Blake, do you want to go quickly?
Yeah, thanks. And also talk to you on LinkedIn, fellow Duke alum. This is, let's see, minute question. Why do you want to do smaller versus larger company?
Oh, the first like when I joined the first startup, it was because I just thought I was gonna be able to have more of an impact and like punch above my weight basically because like they couldn't hire actual experts and so they were stuck with people like me.
Okay.
So that's why I initially did it. And then I just like I loved the, sub 200 person size. I think that you can move really quickly and get a lot done. And I find that really fun. So
Okay,
hope
cool.
this is helpful for folks. Yeah, looking forward to seeing people in the main room.
Since that is what is asked of us. Hey, everyone, welcome. How is everyone doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's Wednesday, so we're halfway there. I think we're at the dead center of the week right now. All right, cool. So it's nice to meet everyone. Obviously there's like a good amount of good chunk of change or good chunk of time, I guess. If you have any questions that I can answer, I'm happy to kind of go more in depth on anything I already mentioned, or like if you guys just want me to continue sharing what I didn't finish sharing on my slides, I'm happy to do that too.
I have a question for you, Laurel. I don't work in sales. I've always been in like account management, customer success. It's not quite like sales roles, but the problem I keep running into in these interviews with climate companies is you don't have any climate experience. And I'm like, well, how the hell do you want me to get climate experience if you won't hire me, or at least like give me the chance to prove that I can gain some and learn some? So, and I'm in the climate base fellowship right now to try and get some more, knowledge and I guess I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but trying to develop those skills somehow and get something on my resume that'll demonstrate that like I have some background in climate. How did you navigate that, like getting into climate before you had any experience?
Yeah. Talk about the name of the game. Talk about one of the main objections you're going to get in like any interview process. I think the first step you took is key. Like some sort of way of demonstrating, especially if you didn't study environmental science or, that sort of stuff. So the climate-based fellowship is probably a great resume builder, something to talk about in your interviews. When I was doing my interviews, I was always, well, not from the jump, but at some point when I started having a deck ready for each interview, I had like a slide that said, why me? And I had like on that slide, part of it was like demonstrating interest in climate through blah, blah, blah. And in my case, it was like, I did an internship with a sustainability coach. I did a OPF Academy, and I did volunteering locally. So I think speaking to that is step one, which I think you've got covered. And then if you get objections continuously, like if you've got more than, I think it's honestly just a cop-out answer. I think that the reality is like anyone that's interested can learn. And, if they're showing that they're interested enough to be dedicating their job search to this industry or to, the broader industry, whether it's like specific sectors is a whole other story. But I think it's a cop-out answer is the long and the short of it. I think I would get that answer, or I would get that objection and be like, it's not actually that. Like, the amount of people that have climate software sales experience is like 0.1 or 0.01%. Like, it's just such a nascent space. It's like in the last, what, 5 to 10 years where people have been saying, or maybe 5 years, they've been saying climate SaaS. So, I mean, the point is, I think what you're doing is great. I think just kind of highlighting what your skills are and how they're transferable and how that hasn't stopped you before. Like, if you've gone into a different industry for the first time before, why does that mean that you can't do that again? You know?
That's a good point. I like that last one round. You're like, well, my last job, I didn't know anything about that industry when I started, and I was there for 5 years. So yeah, good idea. Thank you. I don't want to take up everybody else's time.
No, of course. Great question. It's one of the main objections you get in this whole interview process. Nikki, sorry, I'm like opening the chat now. Oh, okay, wait, that's for me. Could you expand on 2 things you mentioned in your intro? What did you do before being ready to financially invest in coaches? And for the deck, when would you show that in the process? Okay. So great questions. Hey Nikki, nice to meet you. So when I first was part of the reduction in force, this was like at the top of the year last year, I definitely had like a quarter life crisis, and I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And at that point, I was unsure if I wanted to stay in sales, because I was just like, do I even want to still do this pursue this skill set, go down this path? And then if not, what else would I do? I think we all get those once or twice in our life. Like, what are we doing with our life? So I definitely had, that was the moment that I went with Lawrence. Actually got a referral from someone I met at a yoga class who went to Duke, I believe, MBA program with this guy. And he just personality wise was a great fit. When we first had our initial conversation, he was super like easy to talk to. And anyways, it wasn't climate specific at that point. It was really just like, what do I want to do? He was great for that. At a certain point, I was like rearing and ready to go. I had done my exploration on like all the other things I thought I would do otherwise. And then I ended up narrowing it back down and figuring I just want to stick to sales. So the second time I needed a coach was kind of once I had been doing the applying and all that stuff on my own, and I wasn't seeing traction. Like, I was getting 7 interviews deep, and then I was getting a rejection. And I was like, this is infuriating. I need to like get the job at this point. And this, I think, was like 3 months in to really doing it on my own. So at that point, I actually was posting on LinkedIn, and someone reached out to me. Jose Luis reached out to me and was like, I think I can help you. And so we spoke, and he was extremely helpful at that phase in my journey. I needed help finding more interviews, doing better in my interviews, and all of that. So he helped me stay organized and do that. So I don't know if financially, it was always hard. Like, it was just at different points of my journey where I was and what kind of help I needed. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers your first question.
Yeah, I think so. It sounds like you were always ready. It wasn't a point. I mean, you had kind of said that you did a little bit of exploration, and then it sounds like once you sort of reached that point that you were satisfied or you felt like you couldn't go any farther, then that's when you just happened to run into the yoga class connection, right? So it wasn't where like you made a hard decision of like, I'm ready to put the money in now. It was just kind of like you did as far as you could go, and then you said, okay, I think it's time.
Kinda. I don't want to confuse anyone. Basically, like, long and the short of it is, the first time around, I knew I was a little unsure what I wanted to do next, so I like sought out help, and I needed to do so at an affordable way. And then the second time around, it was because I had already been pursuing it, wasn't seeing job offers, and needed that extra support. So that's essentially like how that happened.
Okay, kind of a combination of both.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then your second question, at basically as soon as I got an interview and it was scheduled, whether it was the recruiter call, like the screening call with HR, if it was a phone call, it was a phone call. But if it was a video call, I had it ready to go. If it was a hiring manager call, I also had it ready to go. And I would use it in every single interview, like 4, 5, 6 interviews down, unless it was unless I was that same person and they'd already seen it and it wasn't necessary.
How do you kind of work it into the conversation? Like, you just be like, hey, I prepared this. Do you want to go through it? Or do you like wait until they're like, tell me about yourself, and then you bring it up?
Either. I mean, they're gonna ask you to tell you about yourself. They're gonna ask you why you want that job. And then it's a good opportunity to be like, look, I thought about this and here's a little visual. Again, it's a sales job, right? So it doesn't hurt to show that you have a little bit of presentation skills. It doesn't hurt to show like you've prepared for that conversation, for that question. I only ever, and I wasn't even planning on sharing this, but I only ever got one person in an interview process. It was like the 5th or 6th interview. So it was like the chief sales this or that, who said, I actually dislike how prepared you were. And I thought, you're the only person that said that to me. And I like appreciate the feedback, but respectfully, I disagree. And he was like, you can't be prepared for everything in sales. And of course not. You're going to get questions you do not know the answer to, whether you're on a demo, whether you're in an intro call, whether you're in a pricing conversation. Like, there's going to be questions you don't know the answers to. So you handle it in the moment. But I mean, to a degree, those types of questions, like why me, why now, why this company, they're no-brainers. You're going to get asked the questions, so you might as well be prepared to answer them.
Maybe that was the purpose of his question, was to try to throw you off and see your reaction.
They definitely do that in the sales interviews process, for sure.
Thank you, Laurel.
Sure. Anyone else?
I can ask a question. I also actually have a background in entertainment, so relate to you there. And right now I'm doing a job that is in health tech and is basically like sales ops, which is new to me, learning all the HubSpot, everything, and expanding into some marketing ops and people ops, as well as just like volunteering with some like SF Climate Week and some other climate organizations in operations as well. And I eventually want to get a full-time climate job in something operations. And so I'm just curious, like, as someone in the actual sales, I don't really foresee myself becoming like actual sales job, but I'm more just interested in all the different operations jobs, especially like people ops. But now that I'm getting into sales ops, you know, operations is operations. And if the people are good and the, you know, the company has good values and is trying to do something about climate change, like I'm there. And I'm just curious how you like what you see as existing roles in sales ops, if you have people or if you've been exposed to people who really do kind of the operations. I'm at such a small company that like they need someone to kind of do, they don't have salespeople to do the drip campaigns and clean up the CRM and like those sorts of things. But I feel like at a bigger company, salespeople might just do that. And so I'm just curious if there are functionally like sales operations people, or if at most companies there's kind of just the salespeople who do those things. And if you've also seen anyone who is at a company that does like multiple types of operations, and just any tips or advice you have from an operations standpoint of visibility you've had in that space.
Yeah, I think so much. Okay, so to boil it down, great question. I think it definitely just depends on the org. So I can speak to what I've seen so far in my career, and that's all I can really speak to so far. My first sales, so at Elastic, it was huge. So there was like a ginormous sales ops organization. There were folks that were focused on enablement, like so training everyone, product knowledge, enablement, sales tools, competitive intelligence, like all kinds of stuff, right? All the way to the sales ops, like being in like super ingrained in the CRM, making sure things function when, like when business is closed, going from closed one to like, invoices and all the sort of different nuances that happen behind the scenes. You mentioned a few things in marketing, like drip campaigns. So I think sales ops and marketing tie in certain ways. I'm definitely not touching on everything that was going on at Elastic. There was a lot. Where I'm at now, and even I really am just scratching the surface with Elastic. Where I'm at now, I can definitely see everything because it's just a smaller team. So we sell to public sector and private sector, and in our sales ops function, we have them helping with not only enablement. So when people join, like kind of what's the roadmap, how are they going to get onboarded, all the way to like RFPs. What procurement vehicles do we have? What does an RFP process look like? Because again, we sell to public sector, and that's sometimes the method by which we'll win business. So helping us with RFPs, competitive intelligence, pilots. We do pilots with our technology for cities. So pilot reports, a lot of analysis. And so again, it's and I think what it comes down to is the bigger the sales ops function is, the more that the sales account manager's not doing in the way of like internal work, the more time they have to be prospecting, taking external calls, selling, doing demos, like following up with people. So the less time they're spending on like the internal tasks. So it's ideal if you can get a couple sales ops people that are focused on that to kind of free up the salespeople's time.
Cool. That's really good to know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Kate. Anyone else have questions? Otherwise, I can just share my slides and kind of talk more specifically about my journey and like advice I have.
I guess I just had a quick question. Yeah. I guess because you have kind of navigated different like areas and kind of fields, as I think many of us do, whether we want to or we don't, based on, circumstances. So yeah, I was just wondering how like that is for you, like kind of being like kind of going through different sectors and what like kind of impact that's made on you and like, okay, I'm here now, but like maybe I'm not going to want to be here in the next few years as we look for our future kind of like plans in that way. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to see like how you kind of meld yourself into like different areas because I've also been in like very different areas and I feel like it's very hard in the beginning to kind of just, I don't know, get yourself ingratiated into that working mindset or for the specific company you're at.
So if I understand I think I'm understanding where you're at. You've been in kind of different industries, but you're asking me kind of like how I've navigated the mindset or telling my story or which part of it. I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, sorry. I don't even know if I don't even know how I'm articulating this question. Yeah, I think kind of like how has it been for you like moving between, I guess, different sectors and then how do you kind of see that in the future for like moving forward? Do you kind of like imagine to kind of stay here or like move on to something else? So
yeah,
different. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I guess the reality is we just live in a world where industries are having like peaks and valleys. So I think that's part of it. Like you kind of you do one thing in college. If you go to college, you do one thing in college. If you don't go to college, maybe you start out in a family business or some other trade. You do that for a bit. I mean, I guess I've just sort of been flexible. Well, we have to, we live in a world where we have to be flexible, especially when you see things like this happen with tech, where, you know, everyone's losing their job all of a sudden. So right now I feel like I found a spot that I can grow my skills and also work with clients, and also in an industry that I feel like the software I'm selling has an impact on the planet, which is awesome. And I'd like to stay in this role and do really well for as long as possible. And when the inevitable, or when some new opportunity happens, like, who knows? Because like, as we've seen and as I've experienced, life is just totally unpredictable. I'll just have to sort of navigate this all over again and be like, is there something similar that I can find, or do I have to kind of go in a new direction? I don't know. I just think it's like, it is what it is. I don't know if that's like a good answer or not, but
No, that's super helpful. Yeah, no, I love that kind of, it just kind of reminds me of the word like resiliency, like where we're just constantly being okay, like just kind of like reassessing. And I just feel like that's just been such a thing over like the past years, whether you're in climate or whatever area that like you're in or you want to be in. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
of course, happy to, talk about that anytime.
Yes, perfect. I'll try to connect on LinkedIn too.
Definitely.
Perfect. There everyone is. Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. Cool. So we have 10 minutes now to talk about what we covered. I would love if one person from each room could come off mute and just share one takeaway. It can be something you learned, something that you're going to work on post this session, something you learned about someone else, just whatever it was, just so everyone can get a little taste of what happened in each room. So, not to put people in the spot, but we'll start with partnership. So can someone from the partnership room come off mute and just give me a less than 1 minute rundown of something that you're walking away with?
I'll start.
Awesome. Thanks for
Yeah, so I'm gonna say for Dave that the mindset, going out there saying people want to help me and they will help me, I think it's just gonna go such a long way, and you're not gonna be so afraid, I think, to really ask for help. So if anybody has problems asking for help, just think that, and I think it's just gonna be easier.
Definitely. That's an incredible takeaway, is that people want to help you. And I think sometimes when you're in the asking shoes, it's way easier to help someone than it is to ask for help. But people like to help, as you said. So yeah, that's a great takeaway, and should be an easier one to put into practice. Just maybe not easier, but a tangible one to put into practice. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else from partnership want to chime in before I move on to a different room?
I guess just to build on that, you need to have a good storytelling capability to really explain specifically what your experience and background is and how you can be most helpful.
Yes, that's a great point. Absolutely. I feel like so many people think of storytelling as reserved for brands, but in order to pitch a brand, you have to be able to pitch yourself and be able to sell your capabilities. So yeah, and so much of that just comes with practicing it and getting comfortable talking about yourself and what you've done. So yeah, that's a great takeaway. And again, super tangible. So awesome. Cool. How about someone from the sales room with Laurel? Does anyone want to hop off of mute and share something they learned? Anyone?
I'll go.
Cool.
I thought Laurel did a really good job of talking about the presentation that she had built. So each of the interviews that she did, she had built over several iterations of talking with companies. She had built a presentation about her background, about the company that she was interviewing with, and what she was looking for. And she was prepared in every interview with every person that she discussed to talk about that. So if they asked her a question to talk about what she was looking for, she was ready to go. And being somebody that was looking for a role in sales, being prepared for those types of situations, I think it really helped her sell herself, because she was able to demonstrate her presentation skills, right? So even if the company wasn't asking for it, she was ready to go. And it doesn't sound like it was being forced into the conversation, that it was coming up really naturally. And I think it was something that she had learned over several iterations of talking to different companies and really trying to impress and position herself to those companies. So I thought that was really impressive.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think that's something actually Britton and I talk about quite a lot, is how when you're interviewing, the main goal that you're supposed to accomplish is showing this hiring manager how you perform in that role and really helping them see it. So yeah, that presentation does exactly that. It shows like, this is how I sell myself. This is how I sell a product. And yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's a really, really strong takeaway. And I'm sure people can replicate something similar and apply it to their job search. Awesome. Thanks. Perfect. How about someone from engineering with Nantis? Anyone have anything to share from that room?
I'll share. So I posed the question because he mentioned that he does machine learning, that, so I'm interested in the intersection or between where climate change is, the idea of trying to alleviate poverty somehow, and AI. And I thought the answer was really, it's really going to make me look at agriculture in a new way. So I'm exploring the different aspects of climate change, and having just, I wouldn't even have looked at agriculture as a possibility, but just the notion that, climate change, and there are companies that do things with satellite images to try to see, who is going to have the biggest food insecurity and so forth. I thought it was just very insightful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's so incredible. I feel like every time I learn about a new climate solution, it kind of blows my mind about the opportunity that's out there and the scale that it can take. So that's incredible that you have new avenues to explore, and kind of some optimism probably too for the amount of demand that there is for these types of solutions and roles. So cool. That's so exciting to hear. Perfect. Last but not least, does anyone want to share from product with Andre?
I can share something. So thanks so much, Andre, for the time to speak with us, and for all of you for speaking with us today. I just wrote down some notes on what we were talking about. I feel like he had really great advice about networking, and kind of whether you can do that in person or virtually, and joining like the MCJ Slack, that might be a smaller community. And then something that was new that I hadn't really heard of is to think about how you can market yourself by like writing. So I'm doing like the Terra.do course right now, and he was saying, it's always like a little scary to put yourself out there, but it's nice to think, even if you can just take those notes and write it for yourself, and then maybe share it as you go or when you're ready. So that's something hopefully I'll look to do in the future. So thanks for that advice.
Yeah, awesome. That's my favorite part about, one of my favorite parts about Andre's journey is just the writing about it and writing about your experiences. And so many people that I talk with get like hesitant to put themselves out there and kind of sell what they have to offer, because they're like, I've never worked in climate before. I don't have anything to offer. And I think Andre really is an amazing example of kind of sharing as he's learning and learning all these new things and sharing it out there. And people appreciate that who are on similar journeys, because they don't know it all either, and they're in the process of figuring it out. So I think that's a great, again, tangible takeaway. Perfect. So that is about all the time we have for sharing. So thank you everyone who is brave enough to come off of mute and talk about what they learned. A few things for all of you before I let you go enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Luma, the event platform that we host these climate career advancement meetups on, has done away with event series. So that means we no longer have a climate career advancement series living on one event page. Every new session is going to be a new link. So you can no longer go to that one link and find the new series. So to combat this, we created a calendar. So I'm going to drop a link to our calendar. It is this is where you can go. So bookmark that. You can subscribe to that calendar, and that's where you can get notifications for all of our new events. Again, to clarify, that one link that you used to have to register for these sessions is now unfortunately gone. So you'll need to save this calendar, and that is where all of the future sessions will be. Again, I know this is a little bit inconvenient and makes it harder for all of you to kind of stay in track. So we also have put together a Google form. So if you fill out this Google form, we will create an email list, and then we will send you an email notification about every new session that we're hosting. So we won't email you for anything else, only to let you know about these sessions. So calendar and then form, and that's how you'll know. But in April, it'll be a new link. But then, yeah, with April, it's going to be a career session where you can come and ask experts about different things. So we're going to have Brendan in one of the sessions. We'll have another recruiter. We'll have someone from College to Climate, and then an executive search firm. So you can come and join the breakout room depending on where you are in your search. If you're entry level, more senior, and you can ask them questions. They're all career experts, so they know this space really well. That will be the second Wednesday in April at 12 p.m. Eastern. Again, sign up for the calendar and for that form, and you will get notified. Okay, a lot of updates, but hopefully it'll start becoming a little bit more seamless as the months go on. That's all we had today. I'll send out an email with all of the recordings later on today. If you have any questions at all, feel free to send me an email or add me on LinkedIn. I can answer those questions. But thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Andre, Laurel, Dave, and Antis. I cannot express enough how grateful I am for you taking the time to share your expertise today. Alrighty, we'll see y'all next month.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.